To a Clippers Talk live edition. Chat, where are you? I've missed you since, I don't know, about this time 12 hours ago in the AM, where we did a Clippers Talk after dark. After the first game ever at Intuit Dome, it was a great success, as Farbad and Shari would put it. The Clippers win 110-96 over the Dallas Mavericks. I came home. People were still hungry for Clippers basketball. I got hungry eventually for McDonald's. Ordered off a DoorDash while talking with you guys, and then eventually had to leave for the double cheeseburgers with extra cheese. Yeah, and some fries and 3 chocolate chip cookies. But I'm alive, and I actually slept pretty well last night. After all, maybe only got 6 hours, but they were hearty hours. I slept like a bear. I was probably snoring up a storm. Appreciate everyone in here. Appreciate you guys and the support over the last 24 hours as we had 3 shows uploaded in the live section, the pregame yesterday, the postgame, and then Clippers Talk after dark. We're now 7 days a week. Some say 8 days a week here on the YouTube side on Clippers Talk. If you're just connected to Spotify or the podcast side, you're missing out on a lot of content, including our guest today. It is Justin Russo at Flybynight, KNITE is where you find him on X. His latest article, if you're subscribed to the Substack, and you better be, says Clippers fans blessed with new arena victory as Intuit Dome opens. Justin, my friend, how are we doing?
I'm doing, man. Kind of similar to you. I got about 6 hours of sleep. Didn't sleep as well as you did, though. I had a dog that wanted to go out every couple hours, so I woke up with a headache. Didn't feel great. This has been a recovery day. They have practice tomorrow, so as long as I feel good for tomorrow morning, I'll be mentally okay at that point.
Let me tell you, the secret is you order McDonald's off a DoorDash at 1:30 a.m. in the morning. It goes down real smooth.
Listen, I got home last night about 1:30. I almost stopped at the McDonald's near my house because I was hungry, but then I made the conscious decision to not eat that late at night because I used to do that. Like, that was a very bad habit for me when I first started covering, is I would get home 2 or 3 in the morning, stop at McDonald's just because they're open, and grab like a couple nuggets or whatever. And then I would always feel miserable the next morning. And I'm just like, look, man, I can't do that no more. I can't do the McDonald's at 1:30 in the morning anymore.
No, that's
I'm not built like you, man. You're in the gym, 25 hours a day.
Well, I did work it off with a 7-mile run earlier today, but somehow I don't normally wake up feeling that good after McDonald's, but I don't know. It just gave me a little more fuel today at Burbank Fitness. All right,
Listen, they got that new chicken Big Mac now. Okay, they're changing the game.
Yeah, I just went with 2 cheeseburgers with extra cheese, fries, orange Fanta, and 3 chocolate chip cookies. That's all. No big deal. It only cost me like $25 on DoorDash.
Yeah. No, the breakfast of champions, some are saying.
I luckily, that early in the morning, it might as well have been breakfast. Old Dirty Dasher says, how dare you make me choose between this and the Petros and Money show? Hey, those are my guys. This will be on the pod in a little bit too. If you don't catch it live, you can catch it afterwards. Appreciate you guys jumping in here in the chat. Missed you guys since late last night. Good to have Justin Russo on. Saw him beforehand at the ball game. Got to see the media seating area. I just want to get your overall thoughts and your impression of the first night at Intuit Dome for a basketball game. I know you have been there before. You've gotten your tours in, but this was what we had all been waiting for. Did it deliver for you?
For fans, I think it absolutely delivered. I think it's a little bit different for media now. I know people are not going to want to hear like media gripes, but for media, it's so vastly different from what Staples was that I think it's just a different experience in general. But for fans, I definitely buy into and believe that it's, a far better fan experience than Clippers games were at Staples. Being on the court pregame, I've been to Utah at the Delta Center. It reminded me a lot of that, where it gets very like tight and cramped. If there's a lot of people on the court for like pregame, like filming or whatever, if there's a finals game or when they have the All-Star game there, or even when they have the Olympics, in 2028, I'm definitely curious to see like kind of how jam-packed it gets for photographers, for people recording, for media in general. But yeah, it's definitely a great fan experience. I found, you know, what's funny is I like the Halo board. Like Adam, you and I have talked about this like in person. Like we love the Halo board, but I found myself last night almost being like overwhelmed by it, where like there's so much to take in. It's very overwhelming. I don't mean that like a negative aspect. It's just I think it's going to take time to kind of get used to all of it, and especially for fans, I do think there's an aspect of there's so much happening that they have to figure out a way to digest it all at a reasonable rate to not get as overwhelmed as they can.
No, yeah, it's a sensory overload type of thing. It feels like a basketball amusement park in some ways, a theme park, a cathedral. It is everything you could hope for. So it feels like you're walking through this dream scenario as a Clippers fan, and it's just a lot to take in. It's going to take a little bit of time to get comfortable, but we're okay with that. This is still just preseason, and it was still great to see. Tell me if it stood out as much to you, but the wall has been talked about a ton, rightfully so. That was one area that right away stood out and was very noticeable. I kind of paralleled it to when you have like a home stereo system and you have speakers all over the house and you're watching a movie and someone moves to the right and you can tell it moves across in stereo in the 5.1, 7.1, whatever, to that side of the room. You could tell where the wall was at all times. There was a distinct sound coming, depending on where you were. It was to my right. And it was really cool how loud it got when it wasn't full yet. But the supporters section there, they were rallying the troops. I think they were really giving the Clippers a push, especially in that second half, the early third quarter, early fourth quarter runs they made. Like, this is going to be incredible. Did you get that vibe from the wall and just how impactful it can be?
Well, more importantly than did I get the vibe, Ty Lue got the vibe. Because in post game, he said he thought the wall was really great. He said they did a great job of just being loud, being distractive, being disruptive. So obviously they've already felt the positive impact themselves just on night one in a preseason game. So clearly they believe this could be a positive factor and a helpful nuisance, so to speak, against the opposition. The one thing that will be interesting is so in the first half, Dallas was going towards the wall offensively, and in the second half, they went away from the wall. Now, the road team does get to choose which direction they go for each half. So I'm genuinely curious, do road teams decide to do what Dallas did to go away from that in the second half? Or are teams going to because what I should mention is the wall is on the same side as the visiting bench.
They can't change
So,
that part.
yeah, you can't change that part. So in the second half of yesterday's game, Dallas's offense was being run in front of the Clippers bench. So the Clippers had the benefit of their defense being set up in front of their own bench, whereas Dallas in the first half was basically going towards the wall. So I'm very curious to see what do road teams decide. Will they decide to have their offense being run in front of their own bench in the second half, but that is also happening in front of the wall? Or are they going to decide to have their defense on that side in the second half?
And you kind of answered this question from Michael Bannerman saying thoughts on the wall being on the visitor's side for the first half instead of the second half. They get to choose that. So
Yeah.
that's not up to the Clippers. But regardless, the visitors' bench is over there. And some people in the chat who were sitting at the wall yesterday said they noticed, they thought they saw Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving kind of pantomiming to one another to bring earplugs. Like, that's how loud it was. That was what one fan said they saw at the wall. They seemed serious about it. Miles Johnson said, with the season just over a week away, could we get a Suns matchup preview? No, it's too soon for that. I'm sorry. There's still a game to be played against the Sacramento Kings. We'll have that for you, though, next week. I think Shane Young is coming on. C said Steve should have thought of a rotating wall. A rotating wall.
Yeah. Would have only cost a little bit more, you know. Who's to say? But that would have been like one of those
a portable arena while we're at it. Like, what?
Listen, if anyone could do it, it'd probably be him with the money that he has. So I'm not going to rule it out of the realm of possibility in the future.
Mongo Project said, "Oh, I thought the wall was on both sides. No, it's on one side. It's near the visiting bench, and it is distinct with how loud the sound gets over there. How many people do you think, capacity wise, if you put a percentage on it last night, how full do you think Intuit Dome was?
Well, I think the official attendance came in at 13,400 for last night's game. I forget what it can be at sellout. Is it 18?
It's just under 18.
Okay, so I'm horrible at percentages off the top of my head, but so you're basically, you know, 4 to 5 thousand fans under what it could be, and yeah, it felt like that. It didn't. It wasn't a sellout. You could clearly tell, but I think there's leeway. I think there's mitigating factors. It's a preseason game. Yes, it is the first game in the arena, but it is a preseason game. It is on a Monday night, and it's right after a Dodgers playoff game. So I kind of think that all played a little bit of a factor. But I thought the sound was really good. Um, they obviously do want to keep fans in seats for longer. I'm interested to see how that goes, actually. So who knows?
Is there anything else regarding the arena that I don't know just blew you away? I had never experienced the Halo board like that, and I guess it wasn't at full capacity yet. They're saving that for opening night, October 23rd. All the bells and whistles they have on that thing, but the Mentalist game they played to me was so awesome, where you choose one of
Fascinating.
four colors
Yeah.
and then it zeroes down to see as the game goes along, more people get weeded out. You might have got it right the first time, but did you get it the second time? And then it comes down to who presses it fast enough with the right guess on that last color. And that person won something, I think, in the building
I don't know what they won. I don't know if they actually won or if they just won the game.
for the
But
love
it
of the
actually
game.
zeroes in on that person. It tells you exactly who won it. Like
Yeah.
seat, row number, everything. It's actually fascinating.
Yeah.
So yeah, because James Harden in the locker room after the game basically said that Steve didn't want to give us, meaning like everyone in attendance, the quote whole rundown of what's going on. He's holding back for y'all. James basically said that apparently on opening night, the 23rd against Phoenix, that the board will be fully operational. I like how James Harden is both point guard and orchestrator of the Halo board. That is obviously great. He does everything now for this team. So I'm actually very curious to see what happens. The thing that blew me away with the Halo board in general is, and Adam, you were there, so you could attest to this, was having a live feed of the court and an instant replay side by side. Now, this is where I also talk about the overwhelming factor. It felt overwhelming, like there's too many things to look at. But I do think that's a cool thing where if you're looking at the replay, you're also not missing anything on the court. I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's just so much they can throw up there. The experience isn't like anything you've had before, which is why it's it's difficult to take it all in. It's difficult to realize what you're looking at. It looks like augmented reality a little bit. Is that virtual? Is there really a screen in front of me? I know there's a lot of new technology like that, but I am just fascinated by what it's going to look like on October 23rd when Steve Ballmer goes, now witness the power of this fully operational Halo board for Star Wars fans out there. Okay, more arena stuff may come up along the way. You guys can discuss that, and maybe we'll pull in some of the comments and questions here with Justin Russo at Fly By Night is our guest here on Clippers Talk. Big RR64 said, I used to be a season ticket holder at the old sports arena. It feels so good to finally have our own home again. And your own home is the best place to watch a basketball game in the world. That's how I'm viewing it. That's how I'm feeling it. I just think it's going to blow people away. There were a couple of Lakers fans there last night, people in Lakers jerseys. Even they were intrigued to want to see this place. Every Laker fan that I have talked to, Justin, they haven't bashed it. I mean, some will bring up, yeah, you're not going to hang any banners there, of course. But they all want to come to Intuit Dome. And then I saw, I guess, a couple of Dallas Mavericks fans were trying to get into the wall section and couldn't because that is
I
something that they are regulating.
Yeah, I had no idea about the Mavericks fans trying to get in there. That's actually interesting.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's an arena. Excuse me. I feel like it's an arena that people will want to see. You have to see it at least one time. Like I really do feel like it's a spectacle. Like I hesitate to say it, but it feels like a modern marvel of arenas where I'm not going to say it's up to the level of, say, Madison Square Garden, but like you still have to see it. Well, my dog just went crazy, so my bad. Hey, he agrees, I guess. So, yeah, I think it's an arena that fans across the country are going to have to come see. And the added benefit is it's only like 2 or 3 miles from the airport. It's literally right down Century Boulevard on the other side of the 405. So once you fly right in, you can go right to the arena and you're good.
Yeah, it's modern art. I know we have the Getty over here, but I think Intuit Dome is right on par with it. Plus the artwork outside, the jerseys inside, everything, the architecture, the way this thing was built. It is. I said this last night, but it is a dream realized. That is something that Steve Ballmer talked about 6 years ago, and he brought this to life, and it has delivered in every aspect for Clipper Nation. It is one of the few things in life that exceeds the hype. There aren't many. And the Intuit Dome so far, I believe, yeah, is going to fulfill all the expectations for Clipper Nation. So let's talk about the team now. Comes out last night. Coach Lue talked with Brad Turner, asked him the question about the starting lineup. First asked him about Kawhi Leonard, and then said, do you have a starting lineup in mind? And Coach Lue said what many of us thought. The starting lineup he went with last night is the starting lineup without Kawhi Leonard. Were you at all surprised by that, or were you expecting that at some point here, Justin? Maybe not the announcement, but for that to be the starting five, because that's what I've been talking about for a while. I know people want to see more defense out there, and maybe they don't want Norman Powell because of that, but guys, offensively, they would struggle so mightily. You'd be asking for, where's Norman Powell? We got to get somebody in the game for some offensive juice. How do you feel about it?
It's a lineup that makes the most sense. At the end of the day, it's a lineup that makes the most sense. I didn't expect the announcement last night, but I think we all in the room kind of knew it was coming. He hasn't practiced. He being Kawhi hasn't practiced, and you're not gonna just throw him out there, right away on game one. They did that a couple years ago, if you remember. So why run the risk of doing it again? The lineup makes the most sense, and no one there was surprised. Is the best way I can put it.
How far away do you think Kawhi Leonard is? Because I did a little bit of an investigation going off of all the quotes that we've gotten over the last month or so with training camp and media day, and just trying to gauge whether or not he would be ready for opening night. And he hasn't practiced with the team yet. So he was talking about the build up and the ramp up process. And it doesn't look like he is, past those check marks or cleared those hurdles to get to a point where, and now we lose Justin Russo here. He said his screen froze, but I was good. I still had him here. I don't know if you still did, chat. I thought he was just fine. He was having some computer issues earlier, some technical issues behind the scenes, which is why we got off to a little bit of a late start here. But I'm coming from the perspective right now with Kawhi where it's just wait and see. When he's out there, he's out there. Like, I don't know when that is going to be. I tend to lean towards thinking they're just being overly cautious, and there's a couple of back-to-backs early on in the season. So I know La Murray was talking about an early November date last night on X, and I'm kind of thinking the same thing. Maybe after they get past a couple of those back-to-backs, which are right away in this Clippers, daunting gauntlet of a schedule, that maybe they wait till then to bring back Kawhi Leonard. So it's not on, then off, on, then off. And they can really figure out how to pace him well enough so they have him for as many games as possible this season. No, I don't expect him to be playing in any of the back-to-backs. There's 16 of them as Justin Russo rejoins us, and we got him again. All right, we're good. We're
Sorry.
good. No, you sound good. Mike sounds even better.
I know. I saw someone say my mic sounds far away, and like I literally clicked on one thing, and then it just, like, I think crashed the entire thing, so I'm sorry. I'm not clicking on anything the rest of the way.
It's all right. I was asking you about Kawhi Leonard, and I don't know if you can gauge or put any type of timeline on this. It's Kawhi, but just where you're at currently, given, he's still not practicing with the team, and you would expect him to go through practices, to go through contact stuff, 5-on-5, all of this buildup before he's playing in a game. That's typically the process with Kawhi Leonard.
Yeah, like I said before all this happened, is they put him out there against Phoenix. Was it Phoenix? I believe. No, was it the Lakers?
It was the Lakers game.
Yeah,
He came in and didn't
off the
start.
bench, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then he played. Then he sat a game in Sacramento, played the next night at home against Phoenix. That's what it was, off the bench again, and then he was out for a while, which was interesting. I kind of think they've learned. Their entire thing that they've talked about during this process has been they've learned from the past. So I don't think he's going to play unless, as Ty says, he checks all the boxes. He said that in Oceanside when they had the preseason game there. He said it again last night. They're going to be very cautious. I think they have an understanding. Well, two things. Number one, I think they have an understanding of how to better treat this and how to better prepare Kawhi to play for the future. And I also think they have an understanding to not rush him, to not make it worse for him and for the team.
Do you think if they got off to a slow start, that would expedite Kawhi's return at all, or actually prolong it? If they started, let's say, 2-6, or 3-8, or 3-7, like they did last year, would that change the timeline of when Kawhi Leonard could come back should he not be available in those early games and they get off to a bad start?
It's hard to say. I actually think it's hard to say. I don't think we know. If they get off to a slow start, why rush him back? If they get off to a fast start, why rush him back? I just think it's all going to be dependent on how he feels rather than some arbitrary timeline of, are they good? Are they bad? I think it just depends on him.
Yeah, it's a tricky situation with the swelling in his right knee, as Lawrence Frake put it at the media day with him and Coach Lue about a week before the official one. I don't know. People keep asking me, and it's like, man, your guess is as good as mine at this point. Like,
Right.
How can we know if Kawhi doesn't know because he doesn't know how his knee is responding yet to all of the different steps he has to go through in the boxes that have to be checked? Like, he has to do something, and then the knee likely cannot swell up, and then he moves on to the next thing. That's my guess for this process, and you have to handle it with the utmost caution at this point. You have to err on the side of caution with Kawhi Leonard, but we can move on from things that are murky and very difficult to know about, nebulous, and get back to more of the starting lineup without Kawhi Leonard, because many are just assuming we're going to see that next Wednesday. So you said it's the lineup you have to go with. This is the right lineup or the best optimal lineup for a starting lineup with this squad. What are some of the drawbacks, though, that you could see with Norman Powell, whether or not he's starting next to James Harden or whether or not he's playing the three? I don't know if it really matters. They got Terrence Mann in there, Derek Jones Jr., of course, James, and Ivica Zubac. What are the drawbacks that could be with this five-man starting lineup?
I think the biggest question mark with them in general is, do they have enough spacing, even with Norm out there? But that was going to be a problem even with Kawhi, is do they have enough spacing to augment and at least accentuate the strengths of James and Zoo in the pick and roll setting in particular?
Yeah, I've been watching a lot of Derek Jones from three so far in the preseason. Last night he goes 0 for 3. Terrence Mann doesn't take a three-pointer. That's not great. I think you noticed something else, though, that I picked up on. In fact, I was going to ask Coach Lue about this, but I didn't get my hand up, I guess, in time to get the final question in his presser yesterday, because I've noticed that Derek Jones Jr. has knocked down a couple of mid-range shots. In fact, the first ever shot by a Clipper made it into Intuit Dome mid-range jumper. You had that at Fly By Night on your X account talking about it. And I'm wondering how much that's being emphasized by the coaching staff to maybe show a little bit more of a mid-range game, which has not been his game throughout his career. So while it's a long two, and typically the analytics guys don't like that, are they just looking for anything to stretch the floor a little bit more with him and Terrence Mann?
Yeah, that seems to be the big thing, right? Is what's the easiest way to score? Just get a shot up by any means necessary. So I kind of think that's what they're going with Derek. I wrote that the jumper he made yesterday to start off the scoring for the Clippers was the longest 2-point basket he's had since December 2021. It's actually the third longest 2-point basket of his career. So, that's going back quite a long ways. He came in, I believe, in 2016-17. There's actually, I found a video of him with Phoenix where he came off a pin down at the elbow and made a pull-up jumper, ironically, also against Dallas. So, yeah, maybe it's a Dallas thing. I don't know.
I've been kind of impressed, though, I love him post-game and the way he talks and how locked in he is and how serious he is. I don't think there's going to be a lot of unserious basketball when Derek Jones Jr. is on the floor. He won't have it. This guy is so driven. He wants to be in discussion for Defensive Player of the Year. He wants to pick Kawhi's brain about that. He wants to be first team. He wants to be second team on all defense. Maybe he'll put up the number one finger like Patrick Beverly used to do, saying all first team defense. But he's a badass. And I think there's something, I brought this up late last night, but to guys who are known for being great leapers and dunkers out there, maybe they've won a dunk title, a dunk contest, they don't want to get pigeonholed. Like, they want to show off more of their game. Blake Griffin wanted to. Zach LaVine has wanted to. I think Derek Jones Jr. is another one of those guys that just wants to show, hey, I'm not just an athlete. I'm not just a dunker. I'm a great defender. And by the way, I just shot 37% in the playoff run to the NBA Finals with the Dallas Mavericks, and now I'm taking some mid-range jumpers as well. He's 27. The game could be evolving for him still. He's still young enough, and considering it's not like he has been in a starter's role throughout his career. So even though he's 27, you could still see a little bit more growth, and maybe he hasn't tapped into all his potential, and he's not brushing the ceiling yet in his young career.
Yeah, it's oddly fascinating.
And now we lost Justin's audio.
Oh, no.
It might be my fault. I told him to try the behind the scenes. We could talk back and forth in a little private chat. You guys don't know about that. We're just talking about you the entire time. No, but I was talking about trying to use the computer speakers and maybe the microphone on the laptop to see if that would help. Obviously, so far to no avail. Still can't hear Justin. As he troubleshoots, though, I do think the offense from Derek Jones Jr. and just him being able to score a little bit more from three levels, just be a threat in the mid-range. Because that jumper he got off in Seattle, there was a replay of it, and he took his man off the dribble with confidence to get to the middle of the key and to get it off. They could hear him, but I couldn't. That's kind of weird to me. Justin was audible to you guys, but I couldn't hear him. I mean, it doesn't help if I can't hear him. I don't know what that's all about. Damn, that's interesting. Now I got to look at my own settings here. Oh, I'm still good as long as you guys can still hear me. Adam, it's you. It's not me. It is. It's you. It's not me. It's me. It's not you. Like, I have to be able to hear Justin too. And I was hearing him the entire time until I told him to try to mess with the settings. So it is my fault. I apologize for that. But Derek Jones Jr., if he can not just be an advanced pass guy that is cherry picking and not just be a shooter from three, but actually have, and hopefully he can be that, and hopefully he can shoot league average from three, honestly. At this point, that's what we're looking for. Because in his career, I think he's only about a 33% career three-point shooter, Derek Jones Jr. Like, that is not something that has really developed outside of what happened in that playoff run with the Dallas Mavericks, and that is on low volume. It's not a big enough sample size to say, okay, he's ascended to be a 37% three-point shooter. It's impressive because if you're doing it in the playoffs in those high leverage moments, that usually means, you're going up against teams giving max effort and you're still able to get those shots off. And defenses are game planning for you in a 7-game series. You are, being scouted each and every night. Last season, he shot 34% in the regular season from three. But in his career, he's at 32%, Derek Jones Jr. That is a concerning number. He's got to be around league average with the Clippers to be a threat, to be out there with the starting unit. I know some people are surprised that he's even starting. I'm not, because his point of attack defense is so damn good that Derek Jones Jr. should be out there, and it justifies it regardless of his three-point shooting, as Justin Russo is back and we can test it out. Wait, talk to me. I hear you.
Hi.
I got you.
Is that better?
It's about the same. It's a little bit louder. Either way, we're keeping it. We're keeping it. You're worth it, even if it's at a lower volume. I don't care.
This is driving me insane, to be perfectly honest.
No,
I can't figure out why it's lower.
It is a little bit louder. I think it is. Guys, can you attest to this in the comment section?
I'm sorry to everybody. I really am. This is actually driving me insane.
You're fine.
I've actually switched browsers, by the way. I was on Firefox. I went to Google Chrome. I'm trying everything here.
It's fine. I've been dancing a little bit talking about Derek Jones Jr. and who he can still be as a player. And I think I just asked you a question about, do we really know what his ceiling is still? Because all of a sudden he seems to be confident with taking these shots in the mid-range, and that could be a huge development for him and the Clippers.
Yeah, I don't know what Derek is, and that's okay. I think it's okay if people don't know. I feel like for Derek, there's an interesting thing with him where he unlocks a lot of what they want to do in transition. And I think that's kind of the biggest thing, is he helps them get out and run more. We saw it yesterday. They had 36 fast break points yesterday.
Yeah, do you think they'll have that ever again this season?
I don't know. It's the most they've had in a game. I think I checked since like 2021 or something. It was quite a lot. Like, that's a lot, So actually, not since 2021. Since 2019,
right.
Paul George's home debut against Atlanta, the 150-101 home win. So think of how long ago that was. An entire era passed them by since they last had 36 fast break points. So Derek is able to do things that they have not had in a very long time. And I don't think there is an actual way to contextualize that at a decent rate to where we could actually say, this is how valuable he is. This is exactly the kind of player, like, there's something that he provides them that they haven't had in so long that I don't know that we can adequately say what the full value of Derek Jones is until we get later in the season. We're able to see more of it. His ceiling could be, sky high, obviously kind of a joke because he's a dunker, but we don't know. A lot of his value could come down to whether or not, as we've talked about many times, that he makes threes. And maybe he doesn't need to, because if he's a cutter and plays in the dunker spot quite a bit, maybe there's value there. You get a little James Zoo pick and roll with DJJ in the dunker, or I don't want to call him DJJ. He doesn't want to like to be called DJJ. It's DJ. With DJ in the dunker spot, perhaps
does he know DeAndre Jordan played with the Clippers, and it's a little bit awkward for us to make that adjustment? We will do so, and I have, because I love Derek Jones Jr., and I'm so happy he's a Clipper. It's a little bit of an adjustment, that's all.
Yeah, it's a little weird, like, to have two DJs in the history within the last couple of years, Yeah. It takes a little bit of an adjustment, for sure.
But to your point, he does demand – a player like Derek Jones Jr. demands them to play a little bit different of a style that they've wanted to play anyways, which is get out and run and have more advanced passes and have more outlets. And we saw it in spades, especially Friday night in Seattle against the Portland Trail Blazers, where they only had 16 fast break points compared to last night. But I think it was more indicative of what you could see in a regular season game with some of those long outlet passes from James Harden that were absolute dimes. Like, I don't think much of last night we can take away a lot from it, only because like there's
You're
not
not
going to be
getting
a
20
team.
steals. Yeah, you're not getting 20 steals a night, you know?
That all manifested because the team that maybe is most dependent on heliocentric basketball didn't have that guy in Luka Doncic and another huge ISO guy in Kyrie Irving. So it was kind of expected they would struggle offensively. Now, 29 turnovers, I didn't see that coming, but I don't think we're going to see it again this season. So it's unrealistic to put too much into what happened last night. But I think overall in the preseason, with the way and the style they've been playing with that, get out and run, get some easy points, because we know in the half court they could be tougher to come by. This is something they've wanted to do for a while, and now it's a necessity finally. And they actually have constructed a roster that is bent that way, that can help you in that area because they have some athletes now.
Yeah, I think it's kind of funny. They've talked about like we want to be a defensive first team, and every team says that. Like we want to hang our hats on defense, but I honestly think they fully bought into that, and I think they've bought into the athlete part of this, and I think they've just bought into playing faster and understanding that. Look, if Kawhi's not here, or even if he is here and he's on the floor, like you have to play faster. The most efficient offense in basketball is getting a shot up in the first 6 seconds of the shot clock. So if you're able to generate transition opportunities, semi-transition opportunities, secondary transition, things like that, you'll be having a lot more success than you would against a set defense. And we saw, I know there's not a lot to take away from transition from last night, but what I will say is James has found a way to basically get guys quicker, easier shots in preseason. And those hit-ahead passes, like you mentioned in Seattle, that's the fastest way to do it. And I think they're willing to live with, and I know this sounds crazy to say, I think they're willing to live with 5 or 6 James Harden turnovers a night if he's being aggressive with the ball, trying to push it down the floor. There was a play last night. He had a pass stolen about three-quarter court, trying to make an advance pass. And I don't think that he's dissuaded from making that play or making that read, because they know, okay, if this works 3 out of 5 times, odds are we're scoring at the basket, in those 3 situations. Well, that's 6 points out of 5 possessions. You'll take that every time. So I kind of think they're living with some of these turnovers. They just don't want the dumb turnovers, the very sloppy, simplistic, the careless turnovers, the simple pass turnovers. They had one of those in the first quarter last night. I believe James made a read to the wing and no one was there. Those are the turnovers they want to avoid. Obviously, you don't want to have live ball turnovers, but you would also like guys to make aggressive turnovers. You're not going to get on someone for trying to do too much. You get on people for trying not to do enough.
Yeah, I like that mentality. I think overall that's kind of what Coach Lue preaches in general with, look, we want you to be you. I'll tell you if you're doing too much. We want you to be aggressive. We want you to be confident. The Kenny GM says Harden won't turn over the ball like this when the season starts. Probably not, but to Justin's point, like those are some sins you can live with because it's a style of play that's very effective at a very high field goal rate if you can make those passes and get them to go. And, it also gets them back. We always talk about defense fueling offense, but offense can fuel defense in this case. You get easy buckets to go, you're setting up your defense on the other end. And Carlo Jimenez was talking about, with some of these runouts, with some of these hit-aheads, as you called it. Is that right?
Yeah, hit-aheads, yeah. Or advanced passes.
Advanced passes and long outlet passes and mortar fire passes, as I like to say sometimes. Like, only a couple guys are running, and the other guys get to conserve a little bit more energy. So it can kind of work out, especially when you have an athlete like Kai Jones who can run all day because of his track background. Like, he's not going to get tired from this stuff. Derrick Jones Jr., you hope at the age of 27, he's got still young legs and a lot of life in his legs. He's not going to get tired from this. Terrence Mann's not going to get tired from this. So this starting lineup, to me, they're looking for balance, and it's hard because I've always felt like, and I think it is kind of a hot take, and maybe I'm pushing it too much, but I think the perfect guy would be someone like if Kevin Porter Jr. was a little bit better off ball. And I mean, he shot 48% one year for Houston on catch and shoot threes, so he might be able to. But if there was a guy who could bring perimeter defense and also be able to get into his bag a little bit, ISO, create for himself, similar to how James Harden can, and bring the ball up the floor and also play make for others, that would be nice in the starting lineup. But Kevin Porter Jr. might not be there yet. So right now, you might have to sacrifice a little bit of defense to get Norman Powell out there, who is an absolute bucket and an efficiency machine, and it makes sense in the starting lineup. But do you buy that? And I think in preseason, he's been pretty good on this end, that Norman Powell is going to flip things around with his defense this season, like he has said, and like he has said they've been imploring him to do.
I think he can. I'm curious to see if he will. I think that's the biggest factor. Like, the fact that someone can do something doesn't mean they will. So for Norm, I kind of think, sorry, my dog is very hell-bent on getting this toy.
We'll take the cute interruptions here, not the technical ones. We like the doggy ones.
No, he decided he wanted to crash this, but I think this is the toy. This is the toy that he wants. So, sorry everyone.
I love it.
He ran up to me, looked at me dead in the face, and was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna mess you up right now." But no, I think Norm can do it. He's the biggest factor because he is going to have to take on a little bit more of the offensive burden. I think more of a burden than you kind of would expect him to have to pick up some slack, obviously because no PG. But, he was a good defensive player in Toronto at times. I don't think that player has suddenly just vanished away.
Yeah.
And I think if there's anyone who can pull it back out, it would be Jeff Van Gundy. Everyone I've talked to about Jeff Van Gundy, player-wise, coaching staff-wise, front office-wise, they're very excited about the addition of Jeff. They look at Jeff as basically a free agent, like how they would a big-time free agent acquisition as a player. Everyone talks about this energy he's brought, his ability to connect with people. James told me on media day that Van Gundy's left him notes in his locker. Yep, exactly. I've asked other people. They've said that JVG, he will pull them aside, talk to them, kind of get them all on the same page. The front office is very happy to have him. But I will say that JVG was a Ty call. Ty's the reason that Jeff Van Gundy's here. No one else really.
He wanted him in Cleveland.
Yes, he said he wanted him in Cleveland, but there was reasons that Jeff didn't want to become an assistant coach right then. Jeff wanted to wait for some things to resolve themselves family-wise. I believe he had his kid, I believe one of his kids was in high school, so he was waiting for them to graduate before he just, did all that. So that's why, the TV job was a lot easier for Jeff. But I think we have this concept of Jeff not being around the game for 20 years. But Jeff was very much around the game for 20 years, not just with Team USA, but obviously on broadcast. He has this basically lifelong addiction to the sport, just like his brother Stan does. So Ty getting him, it was a Ty move. And Ty loves him. Jeff loves Ty. I'm very intrigued to see a guy like Norm under Jeff, if there's a way for Jeff to connect and bring that defensive guy back out. And with a lot of guys in general, I think we've seen you mentioned Kai Jones earlier. I think we've seen Kai Jones improve for the last couple of games in preseason, especially on the defensive end. Who knows how much of that's a JVG thing. What's also interesting is a quick side session caveat here. I saw Kai Jones in the locker room after the game. Can I just say, the man had an immaculate suit. It was absolutely immaculate suit.
Was it the one he wore in?
I didn't
Checkered?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that was fire.
Immaculate.
Well dressed.
I had to walk up to him and tell him that it was an amazing suit. And he got this beam, the smile beam across his face, and he was ecstatic. He loved it. So
I said what's up to him early during his pregame workout for a second because he was throwing all these lobs in, and one of the balls rolled over next to me. He came over to get it. I was like, "What's up, Kai?" I love him. I like his smile. It's infectious. You get young players like this, it can be meaningful just to boost morale because their potential and also just having a youth movement, and it's that hope. It's that hope with these guys.
You know what's interesting? And it's an oddly endearing thing with Kai Jones where when you talk to him, two things happen. Number one, he always looks you in the eye, which is great.
He's
And
so
number two,
attentive to you guys during interviews.
yeah, and number two, it's always yes, sir, yes, ma'am. He calls everyone sir and ma'am. It's like very respectful. And it's almost jarring in a way to hear someone say that to you, and you're just like, okay. But like he's very nice. As you said, his energy is very infectious. When he starts talking and he's smiling and he's happy, it kind of like rubs off on you as you're listening to him. And it kind of gets you excited to talk to him and to ask him more things. He's very open and honest. A great personality for that locker room, I will say. And I'm very interested to see how he does. I would say he's probably the front runner for the two-way spot. So
you better be.
I think
if he's not a lock at this point, I mean, what are we doing here? Like, I know Williams has been very good and really impressive the last 3 ball games, but Kai is a position of need. They literally don't have their backup center right now. Can we put something to rest here? I don't think he is competing right now with Mo Bamba. He may at some point, but he's trying to get a two-way. He can't play every night. Can he compete with a guy who's on a standard contract while he's on a two-way? That doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
I don't know if you're going to like my answer. So
okay.
I literally was talking to someone yesterday about this at the arena. And I said to them, I go, this gives me, and I said, this might sound crazy, but I said, it gives me Isaiah Hartenstein, Serge Ibaka vibes, where Serge went into that season injured. And Hartenstein began as the backup center because of that. Because remember, it was between Hartenstein and Harry Giles.
Right.
In camp. And
I thought that's where you were going with this, how he beat out Harry Giles.
No, but Hartenstein got that job over Harry Giles, and he got the last spot. And because Ibaka was hurt, Hartenstein had to play. And by the time Ibaka was ready, Hartenstein already had the job, and they ended up trading Serge Ibaka to Milwaukee. So now look, there's a long way to go. Okay, when Mo Bamba starts to play, very obviously he can basically usurp Kai Jones and just take the job right back and yada yada yada. But it gave me that level of vibe, which is kind of weird. But also, I don't know if I read too much into it, but that's the kind of vibe I got. I was like, I feel like I'm kind of Groundhog's Day in this, where like I'm reliving something from the quote unquote lost Clipper season of 21-22.
Yeah. I even forgot that Serge Ibaka was on that team. Unfortunately, he was never the same by the time he came to the Clippers. He had already had that back injury with Toronto. I loved the pickup at the time, the pivot from losing Montrezl Harrell to bringing in Serge. I was all about it, but he was never the same after that in his career.
Well, what I will say is I think Serge was very good early on in his Clippers tenure. I think we forget
for like a couple months.
Yeah, I think we forget how good the Serge Ibaka starting lineup Clippers were before he then got hurt again with the back issue. And he had to miss time with the nerve damage, missed the playoffs basically with the nerve damage. So I think there was some of that. But also, like, yeah, I wouldn't be shocked to see Kai Jones have a big-time impact.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked either. It's just, I mean, if he's on a two-way, he can only play 41 games. So how do they convert that? They have to get somebody else off the roster. Is PJ Tucker going to be off the roster? But then if you're trading him for someone else, there's another guy taking his place. Now, if you trade him with Bones or somebody, a 2-for-1, then you can open up that roster spot for Kai. But it's not as simple as just, well, Kai's the backup center because he's playing right now and he looks great. He can only play 41 games on a two-way. And he still is incredibly raw out there. And the way Coach Lue talks about him and the coaching staff, like they know exactly what they have, but they also know, as you point out, like he's got a long way to go in many ways.
I actually talked to Kai in the locker room last night beyond the suit thing. And I asked him, I said, I hope you don't take this the wrong way. But I said to him, I hope you don't take this the wrong way. But I feel like you've actually, like, you're up to speed. Like you're getting up to speed on what they're asking and requiring of you. And he said, yeah, like he goes, I feel better today in terms of understanding than I did in game 1, game 2, and even game 3. So I think it is a slow progress. Like I think we forget. I wrote about Kai after one of the preseason games. I kind of think we forget he has not really played basketball for about 18 months. I think I put it down at, if you count his time with the Bahamas national team, I think it's like 285 total minutes of any type of competitive basketball in the last 18 months. That's nothing. That's like 6 games. This guy's still learning. We don't know what he can be. Maybe he doesn't pan out how they want, okay? But we also don't know. And I think that is what is intriguing with him is we don't know what he can be.
And look, if Mo Bamba's out for an extended period of time and he kills it early on in the regular season, yeah, he could take the job from him if he kills it. I don't know what he's going to look like against first units, second units. He got some minutes against Daniel Gafford and broke up that lob after Ivica Zubac wasn't able to break up a lob that went to Derek Lively, where he yammed on him pretty bad early in the first quarter. But I have said this regarding Kai Jones. Progress isn't linear, except with Kai Jones. Like it's unbelievable game 1 in Honolulu compared to what we've seen the last couple of games from him. It is incredible.
Yeah, I actually think he's been the story of the preseason for the Clippers. Like, yes, James Harden looks great. Ivica Zubac looks great. Norman Powell looks as efficient as you can. But the Kai Jones story, I think, is actually the story of preseason, where you look at where he was when he came to the team at the end of last season, when he did the intro presser after one of the final games of the year, and he very eloquently answered questions. You know, whatever we asked of him, he answered. And then we don't see him all summer. And then he comes in, didn't look great in game 1 of preseason.
No.
Looked a little bit better in game 2. Looked miles better game 3. Looked increasingly better last night. I would actually say last night was probably the best game he had of preseason, which I know sounds crazy because of how great he was in Seattle.
Level of competition.
Level of
actual
competition.
Bigs.
Yeah. Well, I think level of competition, actual bigs, and I do think you see him processing things faster, where he's not just stagnant in one spot anymore. He's getting a little bit better actually connecting on screens. He's rolling harder. He's running hard all the time. He mentioned the track athlete thing to me that you mentioned. He mentioned that in Oceanside. And he even pantomimed running in one of his answers to me.
I posted that answer.
Did you?
I love that question you had with him, that interaction there. I couldn't believe he did that. Like, this is somebody that's playing with joy. The answer he gave you there, that is someone that truly loves what they're doing.
Yeah, you know what? That's the perfect way to describe it. He's joyful. And I think that you need that in basketball. Like in any locker room, you need someone who has that level of joy, who enjoys just playing. And he's at that level, right? I think he found the joy in basketball again after having it taken away from him for a while.
I'm rooting hard for him. I can't help myself now. Everything we've talked about with Kai Jones, and you're right, that is the story of the preseason so far. I'm excited how far he can take this thing. Like, the sky is the limit for Sky Jones. It is. Like, it's incredible, his progress in just 4 games so far with 1 to go. Because we brought up how we could get him off the 2-way, which he isn't even on yet. We're jumping the gun a little bit, but how we could convert that. People are talking about PJ Tucker. What are the chances he gets waived? Could they use the stretch provision still? Is that still available? I know they wouldn't want to.
It's available. They won't do it.
Yeah.
They're not going to do it.
What about just outright waiving?
So I think it's a complicated situation. The way that I've explained it to people, that this is just my understanding of it, and how I viewed it is they're not. I know they're not going to stretch and waive them. I've been told that they're just not doing that. But outright waiving, I think, is an option through a buyout. The complicated nature of the buyout is they're about $2.5 million over the luxury tax. While they say that they're not worried about paying the luxury tax, I think if they had the option to buy out PJ Tucker and then get under the luxury tax, they would. The complicated part of this is I think, feel, this is just my take on it. I think they feel if they buy out PJ Tucker, he needs to take enough less from his $11.5 million deal to not just get them under the luxury tax, but drop them about another $1 million under, so they can give a guaranteed minimum contract to Jordan Miller or Kai Jones, someone like that, to fill that 15th roster spot, so they can give another 2-way to somebody, so that they don't have their 3 2-way spots taken up and lose a guy that they would like to keep in one of those spots. So it becomes a math situation where, okay, PJ has $11.5 million on his deal. The Clippers are $2.5 million over the luxury tax, and you want to get about $1 million or so back under that as well to then give that contract, so you don't go back over. Is PJ willing to take $8 million?
Yeah.
Because then he can make that up in a vet minimum contract elsewhere. I don't know. That's the call for PJ and them to make. I think it's easy to sit here and say, well, it's this simple, money-wise, but it's not. You're talking about someone who could potentially lose out on even $500,000. That's $500,000 of money that you opted into and you would want, you'd want the rights to. So
I think you're dead on, though. I think that's exactly what the staring contest is.
So I think there's a discussion to be had with his representation and the front office about how do we amicably resolve the situation where he gets his money and we clear the space that we need without being over the luxury tax. I don't know how that conversation is going to go. One can only wonder. That's between them. But I feel like that's where we're at right now.
Since we're talking about big men, guys in the front court, we got a question from Hockney, who paid 99 cents here for this one. Appreciate it. I appreciate anything. Hockney said, Justin, Adam, real question. Don't laugh it off. Can Mo Bamba become a Walmart? I'm just kidding. I'm not laughing this off at all. I don't think this is that crazy. Like, it would be – Serge Ibaka was a really good player at his peak. It depends on – you're talking about Serge Ibaka with the Clippers or Serge Ibaka at his peak. But, Justin, you can answer this one.
If we're talking Serge Ibaka with the Clippers, I think there's a chance he could supply a level below what Serge did. I think we talked about Serge earlier, but I think we forget how limited Serge was after he came back from his back surgery. Like, he was obviously not the same guy.
No.
But if Mo Bamba can get 50% of what Serge did in the beginning of Serge's run with the Clippers, I think the Clippers would absolutely take that, especially on the deal that he's on.
Like, that first season with the Clippers in his 41 games, he shot just 34% from three after a year where he shot 39% with the Toronto Raptors.
I will say, though, he was really good around the rim, and he did supply them with a lot of pick and pop in the mid-range.
Yeah.
And he kind of I think with Serge, you can look at the percentage, obviously, 34%. But I think with Serge, it was the threat of him actually shooting. So he opened the floor up a lot more for guys, which is what I'm curious to see if Mo Bamba could actually do. Because Mo last year was 39% on threes, 39% the year before. He also didn't shoot a lot of threes last year.
Yeah.
But
he's a career 37% three-point shooter, or 36%. He's league average from three. It's not on high volume, but if you take his entire career total shots from three, I mean, I think it's over 700 or something like that.
Yeah.
It's not nothing.
So I mean, I'm
not
curious,
a bad question.
Yeah, I'm curious. I think there is a pathway to Mo having like the baseline Surge impact, if you would.
Hockney, I guess, like the answer. Did he gift $2 more? I'll split it with you, Justin.
All right.
Appreciate you.
Gets me halfway to a McDouble these days.
Just wait till 1:30, baby. You'll be sleeping like a rock. People are also talking about Hockney said Mo Bamba as a power forward. He wants to see him play the four. Some people have said this just so they can have the rebounding advantage, even though people don't think about this part of it. If he's being pulled out by another four that's a stretch on the other side, he's not going to be near the basket to help you much with the rebounding. Like, these people think you can play Twin Towers, and it's the same as it used to be with David Robinson and Tim Duncan, but you're going to have to guard guys who are taking shots on the perimeter now at the four all the time. But, Justin, what do you think?
I don't want Mo Bamba guarding in space. I just think that's kind of just where I'm at. I think Kai, if for instance, if he plays with Kai, right? I think Kai can defend okay in space, moderately average. I just don't want, but I don't want either one out there on a four who, do you want him guarding Julius Randle? Probably not.
No, sir.
So
what about Kai at the four, who also has not proven to be a shooter at the NBA level whatsoever?
Kai at the 4 I view as like a defensive thing more than offensive. But like I said, while I think Kai Jones could moderately defend the perimeter, I wouldn't want Kai. They're both centers. I think we just need to accept that they're just both centers at this point.
Yeah, I'm with you, especially with how Coach Lue views these guys typically. Let's get to KPJ, because last night he led them in scoring. He had 18 points. I've made the proclamation that I think at some point he's going to be in the starting lineup as a Clipper. That could be next year, guys. I don't think it's happening in the first half of this season. It's a long game I'm talking about. James Harden might not be there by the time he is in the starting lineup. And you know what? If James Harden misses games, if they load manage him at all because he's 35, I would expect him out there in the starting lineup this season. Is that crazy, Justin?
No, I think if James misses games, I think Kevin's the natural fit as a lead ball handler for them, for a starting lineup, I guess.
Because he can play make, he can create for himself. He is Walmart James Harden. He is. Like, maybe Kmart.
Oh, there you go. Now, that was a callback right there. KPJ's, so it's funny, like the first half yesterday, I thought he was very good. I thought he was playing within himself, playing within the flow and structure of the offense. Second half, he kind of ventured off, but also second half of preseason games is never pretty to watch for the most part. So I don't know how much of that should be held against him.
He had a ridiculous oop off that pass from Amir Coffey. I think the best alley-oop was actually Kevin Porter Jr. last night.
Yeah. I view Kevin as still very much trying to understand his place, not just with the team, but within the league and the style of play. Like, for a guy like him who handled the ball as often as he did in Houston, even with Jalen Green there, I think we forget that, like, there is a large learning curve for him a year away from the NBA, even with 6 games in Greece. It's going to take him longer than probably Kai Jones to get up to speed and get used to kind of what the Clippers want from him. Like, Kai Jones knows if I screen, if I run, if I get near the rim and I just play defense near the rim, I'm fine.
KPJ's position is much more demanding.
Correct. KPJ has to run the show with the second unit sometimes. He has to be the main ball handler at times. He has to look for his own shot and try to set other people up. It's like a chess game that he has to figure out. And I think that's going to take him a lot longer. There is a potential looming suspension with the NBA, so it'll take him even longer. So I kind of look at it as I don't think we can fully judge KPJ until you get to, mid-December, end of December maybe. And that's when we'll kind of know, what he has in store.
He is a bucket on that right elbow, though, and the fall away and one he had on the baseline was insane. And people are talking about Lou Williams, and I brought up Jamal Crawford, but there's obviously some James Harden to his game. He's not close to being a top 75 player ever, Hall of Famer, but they're just, little slivers of.
Isn't it funny though? Every time you see a left-handed basketball player who's also a lead ball handler, the only player we could ever think of is James Harden, just James Harden. Like it never goes away. I don't think it ever will go away either.
Yeah, it's fair.
Like De'Aaron Fox. Like when De'Aaron Fox gets downhill to the rim, or he does this little, patented little crossover into the pull-up mid-range, the first player you think of is, that's James Harden. I remember when James used to do that all the time.
Jordan Miller. Yeah. There's another one. Yeah. Amir.
You know what's funny with Amir is Amir has that little wrong-footed turning fadeaway from
he hit one last night.
He hit one last night, and it always looks so awkward. And you're just like, no. And then it goes in. You're like, oh, yeah, he hits this pretty well, actually.
Yeah. Do you know the numbers on that? I was thinking about looking for it earlier today and totally forgot. Because it seems very consistent. Honestly.
I don't know the number, but if I had to ballpark it mentally just on what I feel it feels like 60%. That's what it feels like. I don't know if that's what it is. Maybe I'll go look it up a little bit later. Kind of similar to my Derek Jones 2-point jumper deep dive.
Yeah, put that on the Substack.
We talked about. I'm gonna have to
JBJ or JBG earlier. We got all these nicknames and abbreviations for guys. Jeff Van Gundy.
It's a nightmare. A lot of abbreviations.
We talked about him a little bit earlier, and Coach Lue keeps talking about implementing his offense and guys getting integrated into it and working on it early in practices. He was talking about Kawhi Leonard and him while he's not practicing, he's watching, observing, and how smart he is. Do you have any idea what type of defense they are running or exactly what type of shots? I mean, everybody is like giving up the mid-range, take away restricted area, take away open threes and stuff. But have you heard any specifics about what Jeff Van Gundy is doing?
I have not heard the specifics, but what I've gathered, just based on people that I've talked to, is it seems like less switching and a
Good.
greater and a greater, I guess, desire for players to get over the tops of screens. Like if you looked at the guys that they acquired, Derek Jones, Chris Dunn, Nico Batum, three guys who do hustle around screens,
Yeah.
especially against ball handlers, and they try their damnedest also to pick up full court. I think that their, I guess, ideal for defense this year is less switching, play more physical, and that's easier said than done in the NBA, obviously, but less switching, play more physical, hound guys, maybe not full court, but more full court than we have in the past, and fight over the top of screens more. What I found interesting is in their locker room, which is an incredible room, by the way. It's like probably bigger than my house right now. Which is
I saw you with
insane.
James Harden asking about that. He's like, look at it. Look
Yeah.
at this thing.
Yeah, my big takeaway from the locker room was that, which I know is like a very nerd takeaway, is they have two different types of carpeting in their locker room. They have a gray carpet that is harder or firmer, I should say, and then they have a blue carpet which is like softer. I got jelly legged on the blue carpet because it was like the most comfortable thing I've ever stepped on, and I was just like, "Oh my god, this is amazing!" But
My dog would love this.
Yeah, exactly. But in their locker room on the whiteboard underneath their TV, they had like jotted down like some notes from the game, right? And it was like how many rebounds like Zoo had, or everybody on their team had like a rebound tally. But one of the other things they had was how many corner threes they'd given up and the amount of points that they'd given up off those. So that feels like
Okay.
something that they're kind of keyed in on.
Yeah.
Is all right. Try to limit corner threes, keep everything clogged to the middle of the floor, get over screens, don't get switch heavy, and just play physical, and we'll live with whatever happens.
Do you know what league average percentage now is on corner threes as opposed to, 36% is typically where it's at overall for 3-pointers, but do you know on corner threes? Because that is, I mean, Russell Westbrook, no offense, shot well on corner threes somewhat. Like there are guys who are not good shooters that shoot well in the corner three area because it's a shorter way to get to the basket. But like that's meaningful to me. Them
So
focusing in on that.
I'm looking up on Basketball Reference. What they have for corner 3-point average, league average last year was 39.3%. That's what they have. And the rate of 3-point attempts that were from the corner was 24.4%. So a quarter of the threes were corner 3-point attempts, and teams were making almost 40% of them. Because it is the most efficient shot that isn't a layup,
Right.
is a corner three. So, yeah.
What I like about what you said about Jeff Van Gundy, and I was like, yeah, no switching or less switching. I understand you have to do it sometimes because if you're trying to fight through a screen with how good guys are shooting the ball from beyond the arc right now, you're giving them open space for at least a second, and you can't afford to do that. But there is something to challenging guys to stay in front of their man no matter what. And like you said, they have the players, they have a roster of guys that are willing to take up that challenge. So to hear that from an OG, an old school guy like Jeff Van Gundy, like, no, we're going to do it like this. I think that can be inspiring for guys and get the competitive juices going, especially with the type of players they have.
I think he also wants them to play passing lanes more. I think he thought, and I think they thought internally that they weren't as proactive defensively as they should have been last year, I didn't take it as a Dan Craig thing. I took it as like a personnel thing. Guys just weren't doing it.
Yeah.
And you go get Jeff Van Gundy, who's going to rip into the guys and carries a certain level of cachet just based on his name and his history in the game. that when Jeff Van Gundy says something, I think guys are going to listen a little bit more. So I think they want to play passing lanes a little bit more. I think they just want guys to try harder. I know that sounds simple, but just try to get over a screen more often.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big part of it. I don't think they're going to play actual drop coverage, like deep drop coverage. I don't think they're going to play deep drop as much as they have in years past.
Yeah.
I think
Zoo kind of said that, more up to touch.
Yeah, they're going to be a little bit higher up. He's going to have a lot more on his plate defensively, and I think they think that he's ready for that and that he is a leader defensively. So let's task him with that. Ty said the other day that he thinks Zoo can be in the Defensive Player of the Year conversation. So this might be their faith in him being rewarded with an entire scheme built around his strengths, which is guys are not going to shoot around the rim against him that often. He's a great rim protector in general. Let's let him use his size and physicality to allow our defenders to get over screens more and kind of, close down on three-point shooters as a result.
So I want to ask you about a young guy that I think is, low-key struggling to find his role, and that would be Kobe Brown. And while it's been up and down, meaning going back to Summer League, there have definitely been ups, and there have been really good moments with him. He barely played last night. He didn't take a shot in that game. And I know they were kind of doing a dress rehearsal thing, and the starters were playing through the midway point of the third quarter. But he still didn't get a ton of run, and he's not being as aggressive. He hasn't shown any consistency from the outside with his shot, which is part of the reason they brought him in. He shot 46% that last year from three at Mizzou. And last year in the G League, I think he shot 33 or 34% from the outside. So it didn't, develop. It didn't transfer. And then you wonder, what do you have? Is he a great rebounder? I don't think so. He hasn't shown to be a great rebounder. Is he a great switchable defender? I don't think so. Is he a jack of all trades, master of none? Has he even proven that yet? I think that would ideally be the fit for him, but it hasn't happened because he can play make a little bit, and he can do a lot of things decent, serviceable. But that's not the NBA. Like, you do have to be better in some area or be really good in a lot of different areas, not just serviceable. What have you seen from him in the preseason? And he's not on a two-way. What's his role going to be? I know Coach Lue said last night he's going 10-man rotation to start things off. Is he going to be in it?
No, he's not going to be in it to start. The way that I described Kobe, and actually I think there is a future for Kobe in this league. I think he's just in a weird spot where he's not going to, like, if Kawhi's here, Kawhi's getting like 34 minutes a night, and that's 34 minutes a night that can't go to Kobe. And I think the way to view Kobe, and this is how I view him, is he's a 5 stuck in a 4's body. And I think that's yes, he shot the ball very well in Missouri his last year there. But he also struggled to shoot the previous years. He didn't really shoot great last year. They want him to shoot. They're basically crying out for him to shoot more often from three. I just don't think it's there right now. There is still some development that needs to be had, which I know people don't want to hear because Kobe's 24, will be 25 on New Year's Day. So you don't want to hear this guy's not league ready right now, but that's just the reality of the situation. I will push back that I actually think he's a good rebounder because I think he does something.
Is he great? Okay. I guess I was asking, is he great in some area? But no, go on. You're right.
So what I will say is I think he's great in an area that is very underrated for rebounding, which is he is physical. He actually boxes out quite well for his size, which I do think is a very valuable trait to have. Now, does that mean he should get on the floor? Probably not. But he's also a solid ball handler and decision maker. But you're not going to have Kobe Brown be a point forward on a team where there's James Harden. So there's a lot of factors that go into this to where Kobe's probably not going to be a legitimate rotation piece unless, Nico doesn't play a game and Kawhi's out. Then Kobe Brown's going to get minutes where he gets to show what he can do. But he has to be a willing shooter. It can't just be all downhill. He has to be a willing shooter with an ability to space the floor. Unfortunately, he hasn't shown that often so far in his career. He's going to have to get over that hump sooner or later.
Apologies to David R., who's been getting after me in the comments section over the last week, saying Kobe Brown could start or be back up to Nico Batum. I'm sorry, man. I don't see it right now. I would love for it to happen, but Kobe's got to prove it, and he hasn't yet. He hasn't exactly taken advantage of his time out there. Now I expect a larger workload come Thursday because I don't think the starters and certain players might play at all for the Clippers in that game.
The thing I will say is he can't only attempt 7 threes in 73 minutes of preseason.
Yeah, man.
Like, and this is also just to be perfectly fair here. This is also a criticism I have of Terrence.
Yeah.
Terrence has only taken 5 threes in 4 preseason games, and I think he's played like 70, 75 minutes. Like, and I understand ball's in James Harden's hands a lot. Other things are happening. They have to get threes up. I'm not saying they need to attempt 54 threes a game like the Boston Celtics have done in preseason. Okay, no team is the Boston Celtics. I think we can just admit that right now. But they need to take more threes, and they need to get out and transition more and get to the rim more. They're a team that needs to be built on those two factors. And until he starts shooting threes more, both Terrence and Kobe, it becomes a little bit hard to kind of just keep them on the floor for extended periods of time. And I do mean that with Terrence. Like, he has to shoot more. Terrence has to shoot more, else I don't know how you play him and Derek together for long stretches.
Have the Bones Highland mentality from 3. Put them up, man. Lastly, Justin, and I appreciate all your time and troubleshooting on the computer. This has been a really cool conversation. I think people have enjoyed it here. You tweeted out ESPN's Basketball Power Index earlier. They projected the LA Clippers to finish at 42-40. It seemed like, I don't know, like an easy number for a lot of us to go with because it happened a couple of years ago when they didn't have Kawhi all year and had Paul George for 31 games. And we feel like it could be that type of year for the Clippers, a 2018-19 year, or 2017-18 year, or 21-22 type of season for them where they'll be scrapping and playing hard and trying to find a way to stay above 500. Is that where you're currently at with this team? Are they a team that's going to be hanging around 2 games below or 2 games above 500 all season long?
What I will say is a caveat about the ESPN BPI is the more I looked at it, the weirder it got because they had the New York Knicks at projected at 40.5 wins.
I'm sorry, what?
Okay. Yeah. So I don't know how
Cat, huh?
Yeah, I don't know how much of this I should actually put stock into. So that was a little weird to see. They have the Indiana Pacers at 41-41, which is also very interesting. But I've kind of projected the Clippers at about 42-40, 43-39. The beginning part of their schedule is not easy. Yes, it's a lot of home games, but just go look at those teams. That's kind of it's a wild list of teams. But yeah, I view them as a 42-40, 43-39. You know, assuming Kawhi plays 50 games. Is he going to play 50 games? No one knows, not even Kawhi. So there's that kind of factor. If he doesn't play even 41 games, half the season, they're not getting to 40 wins. They need Kawhi to play 50 games to get to 40 wins at least. So, yeah, it's but you know what's interesting, actually? I had this thought yesterday, too, when looking around the league. The Western Conference, we think of it as being very strong, like naturally so. Like, look at all these great teams. You know, they have all the star power. You start going through a lot of these West teams, there's a lot of questions that these West teams have. Golden State, what do they have beyond Steph Curry? The Phoenix Suns, their injury issues last year. Obviously, Budenholzer coming over has made a big philosophy adjustment for them where now they're shooting more threes. Memphis, you know, they're going to start a rookie center. Zach Edey looks good in preseason, and I think he's going to be a very good player in the NBA. But what do they look like? You know, Ja didn't really play much last year. You know, how does everyone adjust there? Oklahoma City, everyone's penciling them in for, 55, 60 wins. Does that happen? Because they still really only have one ball handler. And if anything happens to Shea, I don't know what happens to that team.
Yeah.
Minnesota, what happens with the Julius Randle fit? New Orleans, what happens there? Because they're going to start Herb Jones as the 5, which kind of be Zion Williamson as the 5. But, yeah, the Lakers, who knows? LeBron's a year older. Dallas, do they have a hangover? Sacramento, how does DeRozan affect things? Denver's bench is severely depleted and they lost KCP. we view the West as this big juggernaut, but every single team has, I think, a glaring weakness, obviously including the Clippers.
I guess I see it more as they may not have the top end talent with known commodities and championship pedigree, but they have a ton of teams loaded with talent on paper.
Correct.
That are still on paper better than the Clippers if
I would
Kawhi is not available for 60-plus games. And right now, it's hard to say that.
I mean, there's been a conversation among Clippers media is basically like, how many teams are the Clippers, like right now on paper, without Kawhi, how many teams in the West are the Clippers already better than? The list that we came up with, like already just off the bat was like Utah,
Portland,
probably San Antonio, and I think personally, I think there's a
Warriors.
I think they're on the same level as like the Warriors and possibly even the Lakers and the Houston Rockets. But
I don't think the Lakers, honestly. I think the Lakers, if they're healthy,
if they're healthy, yeah.
The caveat is health, and there are certain teams you have a clearer picture on based upon history and experience with certain players. The Lakers are one of them, but they just got 70 games from LeBron and AD last season. If they get that again with JJ Redick, I think they might win 50 games.
They could, yeah, absolutely. I just think there's but then what does that number come to with Kawhi in the fold? Like if Kawhi plays 50 games, how many teams are the Clippers better than it? Or is it a couple more? Are they a 6? Are they a 7 or an 8? There's a real hodgepodge of teams all muddled together in the West where if Kawhi's on the floor, obviously alongside James and, peak health for everyone, it's like a group of teams, like 5 or 6 teams in the West that are pretty much in that same tier. And it could go any which direction, depending on, rest, where they're at, whether they're playing at altitude, whatever. It's going to be a very fascinating season from that standpoint for me. Like OKC, I think we've all agreed on. OKC is the best team in the West.
Yeah.
And then after that, there's
regular
tiers.
Season.
Yeah, regular season. And then after that, there's tiers of teams, 2 or 3 teams in each tier, where you're like, okay, they need this to kind of go their way, or this could go wrong.
There's just a wider margin for error in so many of these teams compared to the Clippers right now. And
I would agree.
Even if you said, okay, Kawhi plays 50 games, and I say they go 32-18 in those games. So therefore, they have 32 more games without him. Some of those will probably be without Harden. What do they go there? And can they do enough to get to 45 wins still?
Yeah, my big thing is, so the way I've been viewing this is, if Kawhi plays 50 games, can they win 30 of those? If they win 30, you just need to win 12 more of the remaining 32 games to even get to a winning season, which I think in the West this year, I think if you get to a winning season in the West, you're in that 9-10 mix of teams to where, depending on if a team has something, if Houston has something go wrong or Golden State has something go wrong, 42-40 could get you to 10. I know last year, what was it? Was it 44 wins got you to 10? Is that what it was?
I know the Kings were at 9 with 46.
Yeah. So let me see. 46 got you 10th, but also Houston only won 41 games as the 11th. Yeah. So I think if you get to 42, you have a solid chance of making 10. The biggest problem for the Clippers when it comes to seeding wise is they're not in the Eastern Conference, and that's a killer. Because otherwise, I think this is a playoff team.
Yeah, seeding 6 through 10 in the East would be much easier to break into and feel much more secure about your positioning in the conference.
Here's a question for you.
Yeah.
Are you an advocate for 1 to 16 seeding in the NBA playoffs?
I mean, I was for 20 years because I was annoyed. I was a Sacramento Kings fan growing up. The West has been dominant since Jordan left the second time in 98. I think the Eastern Conference has only won in the head-to-head record of all the games played between the East and West. was like 2008, 2009 season when Orlando went to the finals. I think that was the only year, maybe one other, since 98 that the East has won that head-to-head record. And that's the one I go off of to really judge conference superiority.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I think that they did 1-16. I think that I won't say fixes a lot, but I think it's greater. What's the word I'm looking for? It's like greater honesty in the actual standings.
Integrity.
Where, yeah, there you go, integrity. It's greater integrity for the sport where you know that the team with the best record is actually playing the team with the 16th best record. And you're not having to worry about, like, remember the Clippers Spurs year where they played in the first round?
The 3-6.
Yeah, that should have never happened.
No.
But it did. And honestly, we got an all-time great series, and we would have been robbed of that in the 1-16 seeding. But at the same time, it is what it is.
It probably wore out the Clippers to winning the next round.
Yeah. So I think they still, yeah, absolutely would have won. Real quick, the one series that I think they kicked themselves about throughout history is the year that they lost to OKC in the second round.
Yeah, I mean,
I think they actually
7 with 48 seconds left or whatever.
Well, I think they actually make the finals that year because they would have played.
That was the best year to do it. That was because the Golden State Warriors weren't there yet.
They matched up very well with the Spurs that year.
Yeah,
was the other thing.
The Spurs though were hell bent on getting back and having retribution against the Miami Heat. So it's very possible they still could have lost to San Antonio.
That's true. Very true.
The problem, though, I love what you're saying, and I would reseed like that too. The problem is it will never happen because Eastern Conference owners would have to vote on this, and they would never do it.
Never. Because the conference that is worse off will never just do it. Even if the West got worse, they would never do it because
it's good for the NBA. They don't give an F about that. It's not good for their team.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I am curious about? I wonder if they ever go the process of allowing a team like the team with the best record of the conference to ever pick their opponent.
Yeah, that was talked about before. That was talked about, I thought, when the play-in first started. Because remember, the first year of the play-in was COVID, and it was different.
Yes.
It was if you finish close enough in the standings, we'll do it.
3 games. They had to be within 3 games, which is funny because was it the next year? Well, no, it was 2 years later.
Next year was our format now.
Yeah. The 2 years later. So what was that? The year that the Clippers went 42-40 and lost in the play-in to Minnesota, and then lost the game to
Pelicans. They were up 13 in the second half, I think.
Yeah. That was the year that they should have actually had that, because the Clippers were like 6 or 7 games above the team in 9th.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I don't understand why they never brought back that play-in rule.
Yeah, I think they just saw the more teams in it, the merrier. It creates, whether it holds to integrity. It was the same thing for a while with Major League Baseball, where they had these BS wild card 1-game play-ins. It's like you just played 162 games and you could get bounced off of randomness in a 1 play-in game wild card. Now it's at least best out of 3 series. It's a little bit better, but I hate that. It's just for the sake of getting to a game 7 right away, which brings eyeballs. I get it. It's why March Madness is so appealing. It dumps it down for the casuals. Hey, you can get into a game where it's a do or die situation, no matter how much you paid attention to the sport all season long. But I agree with you. The truer format to determine a championship should be 1-16, regardless of conferences. I mean, we can't even get away from divisions yet. How are we going to get to that, Justin?
Yeah, that's very fair. I mean, look, it's a lot better than it used to be, where the division winners guaranteed a top 3 seed.
That's true.
Because I remember the Clippers, the year that they played Denver, when Denver was the 3 seed, where they, with Chris Kaman on the Clippers, when they ended up losing to Phoenix in the second round, that they
06.
06. They kind of tanked their way to 6 to play Denver. Because Denver wasn't, I believe so, because Denver wasn't that good, but they were a division winner. And Denver basically,
was Melo and Iverson. They had a ton of offense, but nothing else.
Yeah. Because I vividly remember Blake Griffin, and was it Blake Griffin? That was the Reggie Evans, Chris Kaman incident that year.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah.
Swinging?
Yeah.
I remember that year. That was, oh no, it was the next season where Dallas tanked to get Golden State in the first round, who bounced the 67-win Dallas Mavericks team with Dirk as the MVP. That was the We Believe Golden State Warriors team.
Yep.
They screwed the Clippers to get Golden State in the first round. They didn't want to see the Clippers backdoor their way in after a rough season to gain that A spot. Be careful what you wish for. All right.
Yeah, real quick, the Denver was the 3 seed that year. Clippers were 6. But if you look at just wins,
I didn't realize Denver was the 3 in that matchup.
Yeah, Denver actually ended up tied with Sacramento for the 7th best record in the West, and they were the 3 seed. The Clippers were the fifth best record in the West. So under this current format, they would have played Memphis that year, but they ended up playing Denver, and as a result, I don't know if you remember this, but because it was a 3-6 matchup, the actual 6 seed Clippers had home court
because
they had a better record.
That's why I didn't think Denver was the 3 seed.
Yeah,
that's why I was confused, because they took them out in 5 games.
Yep,
the Clippers.
They took them out in 5 because
Elton was insane. Like, he was great that whole playoff run, but I went back and watched some of these games to pull sound for Clippers Rewind recently. I think people forget how dangerous peak Elton Brand was and what a problem he was for the league. Like, at his best, he was like a top 7 player in the league.
Oh, he was absolutely incredible. Like that, I think you could argue that playoff run is possibly a top 3 Clipper player playoff run.
Oh, I completely agree.
Like, I put it up there with Kawhi's 2021 before he got hurt, and probably the Blake Griffin run. Yeah,
2015.
Yeah, when they beat the Spurs, and then because he went without Chris for a little while, and that was that was actually magical. It's actually funny. So I just looked it up. That Clippers team on April 5th, they beat the Phoenix Suns to go to 44-30. They finished the rest of the season 3-5, which they kind of ended up just like kind of losing games here and there, which, if I remember correctly, they were not really trying that hard and tried to make sure that they got to 6 to play Denver.
I knew something was up by the way Mike Dunleavy was slicking back his 2 strands of hair at that time. It was very evil-ish. He knew what he was up to, villainous.
Real quick, I want to shout out because Natalie Nakase just got the Golden State Valkyries job.
Right.
And I actually wrote a story about her the other day because Ty and Terrence got told about it. Ty said he knew, which makes sense because why wouldn't he know? But Terrence didn't know. And Ohm was the one who told him, because Ohm and I were talking like, we need to tell Terrence because Terrence worked with her so much. So Ohm told him, and he had a very genuine, like, what reaction to that? It was Ohm posted, it was great.
I can't wait to call her.
Yeah. I ended up writing about it, but I actually had an exclusive interview with Lawrence Frank about Natalie. So I ended up writing about it, and Lawrence gave me a lot of great stuff. The reason I brought it up is because Natalie kind of ties back to that Clipper era. Lawrence told me that she started as an unpaid intern under Vinny Del Negro and stayed on under Doc Rivers, and then obviously stayed on under Ty for a little while, and then ended up going to Las Vegas under Becky Hammon. And now she gets her own head coaching gig. So it's kind of funny, like when we talk about 05, 06, which obviously Natalie wasn't there for that, but then how soon the next Clipper era started with Blake and Chris, and Natalie was there for that. And all the way up till today, like the fingerprints of people in that organization. So for them to kind of see what happened last night with the new arena, I don't think people can actually contextualize and understand how surreal last night was for a lot of people in the organization, and how much, not just pride, but like genuine disbelief that it actually took place. Because for 25 years, they didn't have a home. Yes, they had an arena, but it wasn't theirs. And when we talk about Intuit Dome and what last night represented, even in a preseason game, I think we have to understand that what took place last night is a new beginning of sorts for that team. That, yes, they've been a winning organization for 13 straight seasons, but it definitely felt different last night that this is like a new era for them.
No, it's well put. I like the way you phrase that. And I always go back to, I feel like they've only been in the league for a decade in some ways because that's when Steve Ballmer took over. Like, they are a young team still in an early young franchise life cycle because they had an owner who was actively working against them for 40 years or whatever it was before Steve Ballmer. So that is a good way to tie this episode together. The through line with the Clippers, and also in this episode, Justin Russo. As you know, he is very talented. Follow him at Fly By Night, KNITE. Subscribe to his Substack. You want access to that piece with Lawrence Frank and all the good inside information he's helped provide today here on a Clippers Talk Live for you guys. You got to appreciate your local beat writers and the ones who are on the grind, like Justin Russo. Justin, thanks so much for doing this, toggling the technical difficulties, figuring that out for everybody, and then staying on for a damn hour and a half here on Clippers Talk.
I had technical difficulties and I had dog issues, and I tried to work through it. I apologize to everyone for the audio stuff. I hope it got cleared up though. So
the dog, you just get the bacon strip out. I don't know if that works for the hard drive or whatever.
No. So, yeah, I told Adam this before we went on air. I actually had to factory reset my laptop the other day.
This is a rough day.
Yeah, and I backed up everything before I did it. So, like, when I had this thing happen today, it was like PTSD. And my brain got fried, and I was just down. But I'm glad, Adam. Thank you for having me. I love doing this with you, man. It's always great seeing you at the arena. As I told you last night, sometimes Scotty doesn't know,
Does the chat know that reference? They better.
I hope so.
Love you, my friend. We'll see you Thursday night back at Intuit Dome. For everyone in here and for Justin Russo, we appreciate you.